4 times. There was a settlement crack in the ceiling in the bathroom upstairs.
Okay.
And she said every time a buyer came in, they complained about that crack in the ceiling. They had to do a price reduction. And she said no one ever fixed it.
So if they had just fixed the problem to begin with,
Right.
rather than giving type of credit for it, seller credit for it, it had gotten rid of the problem much sooner.
Right, because people as a buyer forget what it's like being a seller. The buyer comes in and says, well, I don't want to be taken on this thing. That crack could be a huge engineering issue.
So more so than doing improvements to the house, is fixing the defects, if you will.
Fix the defects. You get more than $1 for that because people discount how much it's really going to cost.
Is that right? So the defects are a major thing when you're trying to sell your home, put it on the market, make sure the cracks are fixed, things of that nature.
But I mean, does that mean you shouldn't paint your house? No, you should paint your house.
Right.
Even when you're in some of the upper echelon value areas around this Fairfax County, you should fix your house up anyhow. Even though someone is going to come in and change the colors in those kind of homes, you know, you should. It increases saleability versus increases value. I think there's a big difference.
So you're saying there's a lot of cosmetic things our viewers can do to fix their home up to make it more sellable, rather than adding a pool or adding a deck, something of that nature. Just fixing it up, cleaning it up, making it look nice and tidy.
Tidy, you know, paint. If there's holes, fix them.
Okay. What have you noticed? Now, of course, we're inundated with short sales and foreclosures. They're becoming fewer and far between, though. But what have you noticed about the short sale foreclosure markets?
Well, it's another one of those areas where we're being told we have to use the short sales. You know, sometimes those short sales were determined, the value of them was determined by a lender 6 months ago. Sometimes they're determined now.
Okay.
So in a declining or an escalating market, whichever one you're in, the closer you are to the date you're putting it on the market, the more accurate your short sale is going to be. And the problem is you can't read all of that when you see the listing. That's what the appraiser reads the listing. They don't say, gee, we've had a negotiation with XYZ lender for 6 months. They just say, we are approved to sell this property. And the other thing is a lot of lenders don't get the money out of the properties because they won't put it on they won't agree to the short sale. The realtor's advertising a price that they can't deliver. You know?
Has it been your experience that some seasons are better than others? The sales of a home be increased value in the summer as opposed to the winter. What do seasonal play in the appraisal of homes and the values of the homes?
Well, I mean, typically the residential market is usually July and August, very slow. This July and August have been very busy.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think that the market's bottomed out in certain areas, and it's people are trying to get those deals.
So you're saying that in our area, our community, that the values have pretty much hit the rock bottom, and we should only expect to increase from here on out?
Definitely.
Is that right?
In fact, if you read Business, the last issue of Business Week, the #1 area in the United States for upward employment is the Washington, D.C. area.
#1.
#1, and this is very, very current. #1. #2 is San Antonio, Texas, and #3 is Greenwood, South Carolina.
Do you think, in your opinion, you've been through that, you've been doing appraisals for over 30 years now, do you think we'll ever get back to where we were at a few years ago? Will the values will it ever be a seller's market again? And will the values come up to where they were?
Well, I have to say maybe. That I don't know if they're going to get back to that level, but they are going to go back up, and they're continuing to go. I mean, you can't find the deal today that you would have found last year.
Is that what you noticed during the 70s when you were appraising homes too?
Yeah, in the 70s.
The history repeats itself, of course. So.
Well, it did. What you do is you starve the market. The demand pents up, and we had the late 70s interest rates, 20%.
I remember that. It was crazy.
I mean, how could you sell a property? And not only that, but we were talking about the financing was different back then. Had a client of mine as a realtor. The first property, the guy had $300,000 in the bank, and they said, we'll loan him $50,000. I said, well, why would you loan $50,000? He said, well, that's all the income from the $300,000 shows. He's been a student. I said, well, that's ridiculous. He could write a check for this property of $150,000. You're only going to insult him by giving him a $50,000 loan. We're getting back to that. In other words, what you have on your W-2 is what you can borrow.
I see, yeah.
I mean,
old-fashioned lending.
Minus you know, minus your credit problems or
Right.
whatever other issues you might have, and that's, don't you agree with that?
Yes, yeah. You are a certified general appraiser.
Correct.
What is the difference between that and a regular licensed appraiser or a certified appraiser? And how do appraisers get certified?
Well, they have three different categories in Virginia, and almost every jurisdiction has all three. DC only had two of them, then they added the third one recently, but they have what they call the licensed residential appraiser, which is generally allowed to appraise properties up to a transaction amount of $1 million.
Okay.
If your property's above that, you're also allowed to do 2 to 4 unit properties, and you're allowed to do land if it's uncomplicated. Now, what does that mean?
Right.
Uncomplicated. It means, you know, it's a 1 acre, it's a quarter-acre plot. It can't be subdivided. You've got good comparables. They allow them to do that.
Okay.
They won't allow them to do anything complex like a 10-acre piece. How many lots can you get out of it? What is that property worth? They're not allowed to do that. Certified residential appraiser has no limit to the dollar amount.
Okay.
They can do basically everything the licensed person, and that has kind of become the minimum requirement in a lot of areas.
Certification.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of lenders. Well, HUD won't allow anyone that's not certified anymore.
What's the difference between a certified appraiser and a general certified appraiser?
The certified general appraiser is allowed to do commercial and residential.
I see. Okay.
Any dollar amounts.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
no limit to what we can do.
I get this question a lot from my borrowers. What is the difference between an appraisal and a home inspection? How much more detailed is appraisal or a home inspection over one over the other?
Well, they're two different things kind of going towards the same goal. Basically, the appraiser comes in and treats the property like someone would walk through the property thinking of buying it. They're looking at the holes in the wall, and they're looking at certain things. They're looking at the counters and the floors, the ceilings, the walls, the moldings, and whatever. The home inspector is trying to find some physical problems with the property so that they can either talk their buyer out of the property,
Right.
or they renegotiate, or they
Educate the buyer to what they're getting involved in.
as I saw the other day, it's not always to kick the value down. I saw somebody that just said, "You're completely clean. This is a wonderful little townhouse, and there's nothing bogus about it. There's no fire code problems or anything else."
So the home inspections, you'd say, are much more detailed than the appraisal.
They're detailed regarding the physical condition of the property.
Okay.
I mean, I don't go turn on the washing machine and all these sort of things. I mean, we don't do that.
Okay.
You want to know about your washing machine, if it works, you need to,
Get a home inspection.
or get someone from the appliance store to tell them to come over.
Why do I need a professional residential real estate appraiser?
You could be going through a divorce. You could need a loan. You could have someone died in the family and you need an estate valuation. You could have VDOT could be claiming some of your land or your property. And there's different areas of appraisal. You could be arguing for an assessment.
Right.
Now, keep in mind when I said earlier about the assessment process was it's not exactly the same thing as doing a regular home valuation.
Okay.
It's called a mass appraisal.
Explain it.
Well, as opposed to just taking one property, inspecting it, when you're going to appraise it, you inspect it and go out and find comparables and determine a value today, as of the date you inspected it. They're basically looking at a history of taking maybe your entire subdivision and every split foyer or rambler in that subdivision and coming up with kind of a blended, it's not necessarily an average, but I guess you could talk in those terms. They come out with what they say is a value. Do they go in all those properties? Do they know that your property has granite counters and mine doesn't? No, they don't. They haven't been in that property in 10 years, and sometimes they haven't been there at all.
Right.
So it's not the same thing. They don't know. They're getting kind of a blended average. When the market is going up, okay, your assessment usually is lower than what the real value is because they're appraising it a year ago.
Okay.
If we appraised one at this part in 2010, they're looking at comparables from 2009
Okay.
because they're going back to January 1 as the valuation date, and they're using comparables year before.
Okay.
That's not what we do. We're appraising it today.
Right.
So you're asking earlier, did you get, if you got an appraisal, will that help you in the assessment process? Yes, if you go back to January 1 and do it.
Right. Okay.
And we do this all the time, basically. When you have an estate, you go back to when the person died and you appraise it that day.
Okay.
Can you use comparables after that date? Well, kind of, but it's better if you don't. But there's a little bit of latitude they're giving the appraiser when they do it. So, and they have a computer. The mass appraisal is a big computer analysis. It's not where they just sit there and take 3 comparables. They take a lot of comparables. And,
Okay.
and
We've only got about a minute left, but one quick question. These web appraisal services like Zillow.com are exploding in popularity.
Right.
What is your feeling on those website appraisal systems?
well, my nephew looks at one of those things every day and keeps calling me up, wonders when his property value is going to go back up. But
how accurate do you think they are?
Well, it's kind of like washing a car. If you have your car detailed versus just kind of having a rinse on your car, that's kind of what it's all about.
Okay.
The sales they use, they don't know anything about the conditions of them. Okay. They're just kind of blending a number. A little bit different than the county's doing, but you know.
Thanks for being on our show, Bob. Appreciate that. Remember, if you would like to apply for a mortgage loan or you just have some questions in regards to mortgage loan, please visit our website at markrigney.org. If you have questions about appraisals, please visit Bob's website at o'brienconsultants.net. We will read some of your questions on our next show. On behalf of my friend and colleague Bob O'Brien, thank you for watching Mortgage Solutions with Mark Rigney. We will see you next time.